fine. Yeah, I don't know where it came from, that's fine.
So Joel informed me he's not going to be into the meeting till 7:30,
Okay.
so might be next door to the game or something.
He is.
We all set?
I think so.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's school board meeting. Would you please join me for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public participation. At this point, I'll open it up. I see we have some members present.
You got a phone?
Students. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Okay, Jen, do you have anybody on the meeting that would like to speak?
If anyone online would like to speak, you can either indicate in the chat or if you'd like to unmute yourself at this time. I don't have anyone who's put anything so far, though.
Okay. We'll wait a minute to get our phone to see if there's anybody calling in. Tonight we have myself, Tim, Josh, Stan is online, and Joe will join us later in the meeting.
Thank you.
So moving on, next we have meeting minutes. We have meeting minutes of January 25th, public and non-public.
I'll make a motion to approve the public session minutes of January 25th, 2021, as well as non-public session 1, 2, 3, and 4 as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Tim, seconded by Josh. Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of February 4th, 2021 public session.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Both motions 4-0. Next, we have prom proposal, class of 2021.
Clap.
Could you come up to the microphone over there so the people in the meeting can hear you that are online? Well, actually, that one's attached to the
TV.
TV. Right.
TV, right, but they'll pick it up. If you
Okay.
yell, they'll catch you on TV and on the video as well.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm Mackenzie. I'm the class president of the class of 2021.
My name is Martin Robinson. I'm in charge of media and fundraising.
Okay.
So we want to have a prom, even though we're in a pandemic right now, and that's crazy, and it's going to be difficult and more complicated than having a regular prom. We really want it to happen, and it's really important to us. So we came up with this plan. So for the event itself, we're going to have about 75 to 100 people. We're shooting for May 29th. The juniors are planning on having their prom sometime in early May, so we were hoping for the 29th. But of course, other Saturdays may also work. It'll be about $3,000. We have that in our funds, and it's going to be about the same as an indoor venue, so we're planning on having it outside. So either the football field here at the high school or the Farmington Country Club are both options, and having an outdoor prom will be easier to stick with social distancing guidelines.
Yes, so many other schools have had their prom during the pandemic, so holding this event wouldn't be as much of a problem as we've thought of in the past. Prospect Mountain High School in Alton is just one of those examples. They had an indoor prom in a banquet hall where they wore a mask when being served food, and that prom had about 65 kids.
Right, and that is pretty close to what we're expecting, so it's pretty comparable. So to stick with COVID-19 state guidelines, like I said, we're going to have an outdoor venue. We'll have, social distancing, wearing masks. We'll wear masks the entire time, except when eating. Obviously, you can't wear masks during that time. But the people who are serving food will wear masks, and they will also wear gloves. And we'll fill out a pre-screening form, like what we have to fill out before we come to school. And temperatures will be taken upon arrival. And yeah, I think that's for that. But we also have some guidelines that we were hoping would allow us to maybe be closer than 6 feet when dancing, and sort of to avoid liability issues. So those would include possibly taking a test before coming in and having to prove that, yes, we are negative for COVID-19. And if necessary, we can go remote before prom, so that it's not just like, oh yeah, we were negative on Wednesday, and then the following Saturday, I mean, you don't know what's happening between that time. So if we have to, we can go remote. Seniors under the age of 18 and will be required to have parental permission.
To kind of branch off on the testing part, we did a lot of research on COVID testing in general, and a lot of research, a lot of healthcare providers will actually cover the cost of a COVID test. And if we can't, we have brought forward to all of our class officers, and we would be willing to run a mini fundraiser to be able to cover the cost of students who either don't have healthcare or their healthcare providers don't cover the cost of it. But in conclusion, prom is an event that every high schooler looks forward to. I mean, I remember when COVID first took effect and we were told that we weren't going to have a prom. I was going through my socials and I was feeling very heartbroken that all these other people have had proms and I haven't yet. I remember just the week before I bought my dress. Let alone all the guys that had worked up the courage to ask a girl to prom, and all the girls that had already paid for everything. It just broke our hearts. And I'm sure 10 years down the road, some of us will find our old photos in our closet and unlock those childhood memories of being a kid again. I'm sure you all remember your prom when you were in high school, whether you were a senior or a junior. It was so one night to come together and be kids before the inevitable came and you had to become adults.
Morgan, can you speak into the mic?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Prom is one of the key milestones in college and high school. I'm sorry, and it is one that none of us want to miss. With these precautions, it's possible for this event to be held safely. Sporting events and other activities have been taking place throughout the year, so this event that is so important to us seniors shouldn't be overlooked. The class of 2021 deserves this chance to enjoy each other's company one more time before we graduate and go our own separate ways. Thank you.
Tim?
First of all, I think you folks did an awesome job in your plan presenting it to the board. I'm only one of 5, but my opinion is let's make this the best prom that our school district has ever seen. Just a couple of things that I kind of noticed going through here, and I'm the nitpicker. We're talking about a tent outdoors. If the tent is going to be used, that may be something that's subject to a permit from the fire marshal's office. So it's something that we have to look at. It's called an assembly permit. So there needs to be some type of communication between the school and the fire chief to see if that permit is required. It doesn't cost anything, but to schedule it so that the tent is set up and they can do the inspection before the actual prom is held. You guys mentioned food. Is this something that you're going to have catered outdoors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Our athletic games, are we going to have outside bathrooms set up from our sports, or is that something?
They're only here during football, so we would need to have porta potties brought in.
Okay. And I guess the board can discuss it. As far as the testing, if there's a charge that isn't covered by insurance, I think we should pay for that. It's a school event. I don't think we should put it on the kids to cover their costs. They appreciate the offer. The other thing that I think can be covered under our fund is if there's a cost for the tent because COVID is requiring us to move this outdoors, I think we should eat that cost. And I think they should take the money that they've worked hard for and put it into their event. That's just my opinion.
Thank you so much.
The last thing that I was thinking about is the end of May can be cold. Not sure what the other board members, but is there any area outside of the football field that potentially we could contain a bonfire? And maybe have fire department there monitoring or something, but you've got a place to stay warm outdoors, because March at 10 o'clock at night, depending on what the hours are, or May, can be pretty cold, especially if you're in formal attire. So those are my comments. I'll leave that with the rest of the board for discussion. I think in the testing, I don't think we have to make a decision tonight because we're a couple months out. But within the plan, we can say, okay, 2 weeks before, if the board decides that testing's required, then we can make that decision at that time. And I think there's also some parental input that needs to be had. You know, does this meet the expectations of the parents? Because realistically, particularly for the kids under 17 or some of the kids that are 18 living at home, it's going to be the parents' decisions whether you go in or not, and I think we need to include them in that process.
Other members?
What is the cost for the COVID tests? You said you did some research on those?
I actually couldn't find the cost because it depends on how much your healthcare provider will
do you have
cover
that?
or not cover.
Typically, a rapid test, the charge out of pocket has been between $75 and $100, although I've heard people say they've been charged up to $125. PCR tests are typically higher out of pocket, but they're also more commonly covered by insurance.
Gotcha. That's it.
Sure, I have a couple of questions.
Sarah, Ruthell?
I have a couple of
Go ahead.
questions as well. So, let me come over and get some phones. I don't want to sit in my bathroom. When you mentioned go remote, do you mean quarantine for that time or just be remote for school? Because there is a difference.
I feel like we would go both quarantine and remote.
Okay. And then you mentioned the country club. Are they planning, if you were to use that venue, are they looking to close the club for you for that night? Or would the clubhouse still be open to patrons with the bar? Because that's a question that I would have with having an event there.
I don't know the answer to
Okay.
that.
Probably something for us to look at.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then, since it's so late in May, and I know you're gonna have some money because you haven't been able to expend everything that you've been able to, are you looking at still doing a senior banquet as well, or are you looking to kind of combine this as one big shebang?
Yeah, it's gonna be one event.
Okay. All right. That's what I have. Okay.
So, Ruth Allen, back to your question regarding the quarantine or go remote, and where is that in this plan?
Well,
Before or
they
after?
mentioned that they would be willing to go remote for the time leading up to. My question is, doing remote classes or truly being quarantined? Because those are two very different things.
Right.
You may be taking classes remotely, but out in the community for 2 weeks, or are you quarantining leading up to that time to make sure that you are COVID-free, or as COVID-free as you can be?
But they're saying they're willing to do that. But
That's what
not
I'm
in their
hearing, at least
proposal.
from these two. I think
But-
these two would probably crawl over glass, but we'll see.
But that, you're not proposing that, you're saying you're willing for that to be put on you as a requirement, as opposed to testing,
Right.
or in addition. Okay. Stan, any comments or questions?
Well, it looks pretty clear, and I like where the conversation's going.
Thank you. I agree with Tim. I think this is something that I'm certainly supporting to do. I guess logistically, which makes sense, whether a testing requirement or quarantine. I think I would prefer the testing so students can be in class as much as possible. But how that's going to be able to be worked through,
We'll have to look at that.
care providers. Has you and your staff had a chance to review this and come up with any thoughts or concerns?
I've looked at it. Yeah. I would have to look to see what the logistics are in the testing as well. It's possible that we might even be able to have someone come in and do a rapid test for the kids here, which would be the most ideal. We would have to look to see how that's workable, but it's becoming more a possibility. Several months ago, it would have been, yeah, it's not going to happen.
And that testing period would be 3-4 days before?
If it's a rapid test, ideally, it's that day.
Okay.
Or Friday night.
What, Friday night? I mean,
And they can quarantine during the day till they come to prom. When I'm saying Friday night, I'm meaning they're in school Friday, everybody's here, potentially do the test, they go home, and they're quarantined, self-quarantined until they come back to the prom.
And then do you feel that there should be a need for testing after, or if we do the testing before? I mean, what's your thoughts with that one?
testing after, I mean, rapid tests too, you're likely to have false negatives, but there's no guarantee either way. And I think if we're looking at, you know, students being symptom-free, I don't know that turning around and saying, and we're going to test you again on Monday morning is necessarily helpful. Nor does that necessarily give us where things go. It may take 5 to 7 days before we know what, if anything, has bloomed.
Now, would it make, and I'll throw this out there, would it make more sense to be test, say, 2 or 3 days before? And so that if somebody had a positive, they could retest to see if it was a false positive? And then
But if you
just
test
through,
everyone that early, then, again, you've got quite a bit of time in between.
right, but you still would be doing a sign-off as far as not having any symptoms. How is that different than any other day to school?
They're not dancing together at school? That would be
Yeah.
my difference there. Otherwise, probably not a lot of difference. And, you know, I haven't watched the cameras. There may be a couple of clandestine dances somewhere, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one concern is I would hate to see it get scheduled that day, be a few students that come up with a false positive and can't attend an event, but then on subsequent tests they didn't have it. I mean, that's a risk that we'd have to take, but
You may very well have a false negative, they attend, and then we have lots of positives later. I mean, you don't
right,
know that,
but the chance
so-
for a false negative is much less than a false positive based upon a result from the statistics of the testing.
I guess.
Not with the rapid test, but yes.
Yeah.
I guess my other question is, when we're talking May, we don't know what's going to happen between here and May. As of tonight, last I checked, we have 6 cases in town. We don't test to play sports. I know this is a little different, but do we need a test? And before we say we're going to test, for a survey or some other means, shouldn't we be asking a parent, do you want your son or daughter tested? I think that's important. I know it's being presented here, but before I make a decision saying we're going to test, I kind of want some parental input, because that would, as a parent, that would rub me the wrong way.
Well, and I think really what's been put forward here is the seniors are
Yep.
putting forward possibilities, saying, we're willing to go do as much as we possibly can here to make sure this happens. Did I interpret that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please mute. Thank you.
There you go. I'm certainly in favor of supporting this event, and I think that staff might be able to work out the final details and come back to us closer to the event with what they're recommending. I do agree with, I mean, Tim brings up a point of, we're not required testing for our sporting events, where people are closer than that, so if we try to keep it closer to in line what we're currently doing, it may just add to the consistency of the requirements that we're putting for extracurricular activities. Not saying it's not a bad thing to do testing, it would be good, but I'd hate to see people miss it with a false positive, but we certainly want the more securities we can put in place. So I would make a motion to support this event and have the management team come back to us with a final proposal.
Second.
Do a friendly amendment,
What is it?
that we approve having the prom.
Right.
And that 2 weeks prior, the superintendent comes back with a safety plan.
Okay, I'll accept that friendly
Can
amendment.
we do it 3 to 4 weeks, just to make
Yeah,
sure
that's
that we
fine.
have time to
Yeah.
implement?
Yeah,
Let's do it 4 weeks.
yeah, so the amended motion is to approve it, and that Ruth Ellen will bring back a safety plan prior to the event. Any discussion?
The only thing that I would suggest, perhaps, instead of the bonfire, if we're able to cover the cost of some of the other pieces, maybe those propane heaters instead of,
Something to that
that might
effect,
be
yeah,
easier on the
yeah,
grounds
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. Just
And that was
thinking,
my
I know what
concern,
the cleanup
somewhere
from the
away from
last
the football
bonfire was
field, yeah.
like.
It might be
So-
easier to manage from a safety
Yeah.
proposal.
Yep.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Stan?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Congratulations. and
Thank you.
Please work with Ruth Ellen and staff to finalize the details.
And thank you for an outstanding plan.
Thank you. Nicely done, ladies.
Next, we have trophy case proposal.
Hello, I'm Shelby Henry. I'm from 8th grade, and I want to take on the challenge of building trophy cases for Henry Wilson. I've passed out some papers, well, Miss Vaughn did,
Yeah.
of designs that for the trophy cases that are inspirations of what I want to try and build. This is for a STEAM project, hopefully. And I want to try and use cherry wood, and the dimensions are 6 feet wide, 8 feet tall by 2 feet deep. And I want to try and fundraise it through the community and purchase materials for the cases through those fundraisings. I'm asking for this board's support and blessing to do this as a project for STEAM and to go through with it. I would like to light the cases. Currently, there aren't outlets where the cases go, but we would need a professional to do that because I'm not licensed to.
So did you have what you feel is going to be a budget for what you need to fundraise? Do you have any
No.
idea?
No. I don't.
That's next step.
Next step? Okay.
Yeah, I want to try and get the permission before,
Yeah?
yeah,
And your choice of using cherry,
yes.
why is,
Because it would go nicely with the wood that's already behind it in Henry Wilson in the lobby.
okay. Good. Any of the board members have any questions?
No, I think this is great. When you come up with a budget, could you get it back to us?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
How long do you feel it's going to take for you to accomplish this?
Well, this would be my STEAM project, and STEAM's about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. So I'd have to put a lot of time in after school, and that'd probably be the time frame.
And do you feel you have the proper tools to accomplish this?
I think, yeah, pretty, for the most part.
I'm always looking for excuses to buy more tools. But most of the stuff can be made available to them.
Okay. Well, it's certainly a very ambitious project. Will you be having any help?
Other than my teacher, no.
No? So you
Or maybe professionals that offer their help, but other than
Yeah,
that.
no other students are going to be participating with you? Okay. Well, I would certainly encourage this project. I think it's certainly a big undertaking, and hopefully you'll get the support you need from the community to fundraise for it and maybe assist with some of the materials. Anyone with any questions? So,
One of our
go ahead.
building principals has a question if they can address the board.
Go ahead.
Giselle?
Hi, I just wanted to tell you how much support we have for Shelby Henry at Henry Wilson School. I wanted to let you know that she already had made a website this year in honor of Veterans Day for teachers to use with their students, and she differentiated and came up with activities for younger kids as well as older kids. She's an amazing asset to our school and community, and I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, thank you. Shelby, do you have anything else to add?
No.
So Ruth Ellen, typically you would like to see just a motion supporting this project? I mean, typically, how is it done?
Well, we've never had anyone offer to build something quite like this before. So I would say certainly a motion in support of the project. And then I will talk with Shelby about fundraising. Fundraisers have to come through my office. And we'll get that rolling and help you with some advertising out on the district website and see what we can do from there.
I'll
Okay.
motion to support Shelby's trophy display and cherry project.
Second.
Discussion by the board. Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Shelby, once you get a goal in your fundraising, please let us know what it is so we can help you out.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next, we have reports. We have Valley View School. Do we have anybody presenting for that? Ms. Ellen?
Yes, we do.
Go ahead.
Good evening, board. So I just wanted to say, we have had a great month at Valley View, and I will say this has been one of the more normal and stable months we've had all year, which has been phenomenal. I think everyone has appreciated that. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of the Valley View community for banding together to create a safe and productive learning environment for all of our students. And that includes faculty, staff, support staff, families, students, community members, the SAU office, and the school board. I'm very appreciative of all that you've done for our students and our school. With the assistance of Dr. McBriety, our teachers have been focusing on their learning goals for their students for the remainder of the school year. Along with determining what these goals are, they have been also looking at what types of high-quality assessments they can create for our students so they have evidence that the content being taught has also been mastered. And this is, as I'm sure you know, no small task, and I'd like to thank them for all their hard work and future-focused thinking. Last Wednesday's PD Day allowed for the faculty and staff to focus on the important needs of our school as we look towards the future. The conversations that arose from this session were refreshing from an administrator's perspective, as the faculty and staff were allowed to have their voice heard and we made part of the decision-making process. On Wednesday, February 3rd, we had 4 authors join our students throughout the day to read their books to the students and answer any questions they had about the literary world. This event was set up by our librarian, Mrs. Lavasser, in conjunction with World Read Aloud Day. And I'd like to thank Mrs. L for setting up the event and coordinating with all of the authors. Our students loved the opportunity to talk to them and learn more about the new literary creations that were presented to them. As we near winter break, I wanted to echo the words of the school board that have been mentioned in the past, as well as the SAU office, to all of our families, that if you travel outside of the New England area, or have visitors from outside the New England area, your students will have to quarantine for 10 days following their return or the departure of your visitors who may not have quarantined themselves. Please keep this in mind as you make your vacation plans. And finally, Valley View teachers have begun and will continue to put up signups for our Monday, March 8th parent-teacher conferences. Please keep an eye out for this if you haven't seen your teacher signups yet. And also grades close on trimester 2 on March 12th. So that's it for me. Thank you very much for your time.
Just got a quick question.
Go ahead, Tim.
Hey, Brett, I appreciate the report. One thing that I'd like to see in future reports, if you don't mind, and Mr. Roberts did it in his, at the very top of the principal reports, can we get an outlook on how many students are in person and how many students are remote?
Oh, definitely.
Just so district-wide, we kind of have a picture. That would be helpful if it can be done.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely do that. I could send that to you guys tomorrow as well if you'd like for
Okay.
Valley View.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else, any questions for Blake? Moving on, we have a report from the high school. Do we have Paul with us?
Believe so.
Yep, I'm here. Hopefully, I'm not sounding like a bunch of chipmunks at the moment.
You sound good.
Okay, good. All right. Good evening, everybody. Like it says at the start, current enrollment at Farmington High School is 242 students. There are 75 students who are remote. This represents 30% of our student population. Winter athletics have been going this past month. Boys and girls JV and varsity programs have been out on the court, having the opportunity to play some basketball, and we are doing a good job keeping up with the district safety protocols. I want to thank the coaches and athletes and game day staff and custodians and bus drivers who've just done a terrific job stepping up with the new expectations and protocols. As the season goes on to the end of the month and into the beginning of March, I just want to emphasize the importance of maintaining those protocols and thank you ahead of time for doing stuff. In the immortal words of Joel Shagnon, go Tigers. This week at Farmington High School is Winter Carnival. The theme for this year's carnival is Decades. We've altered the bell schedule a little so we can have the activities going on at the end of each day as opposed to just simply having one day of activities. There are a mixture of activities both inside and outside the school. Different activities happen each day. Today I wasn't sure what I got a bigger smile out of, watching kickball in the snow or students trying to basically take frozen t-shirts and open them up so they could actually get them on. Today was tie-dye day. Tomorrow is twin day. Wednesday is decade dress day, which I'm curious to see. I'd always hoped that the 70s and 80s were kind of past us. Thursday is pajama day, and Friday is class colors. Allison O'Donnell and Eric Kumba have been instrumental in organizing the week along with Eric Larkham, and I can't say enough about the three of them for the work that they've done. Over the past weeks, the PLC groups at the high school, we've been reviewing resources as well as listening to some speakers about topics in motivation and grading practices. We are going to move on and look ahead at probably looking at assessments and how to create really high-ranking assessments. I know this was a part of my last month's board report, but I kind of want to make sure it's out there for the community. March 24th is the day that we're planning our school-wide testing day. We're still in the planning stages. We're starting to begin to train proctors and things like that. The freshmen and sophomores will be taking the PSAT. The juniors will be taking the SAT, which is digital this year. And we're going to be asking seniors if they can take the ASVAB. So that in a nutshell is what we've been up to the last month.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Question for you, Paul. What is a PLC group?
PLC are it's called Professional Learning Communities. It's a group of teachers and Eric and myself, and we look at a variety of topics, basically have discussion and debate about those topics, seeing how they may help with their current practices. The idea, at least the way I envision is that we have a lot of experience in any school staff, and this is just a way to begin to take advantage of all that experience.
Now, is this group comprised solely of teachers in our school district or outside also?
The group in the high school is high school teachers. Because of our schedule, the high school teachers generally meet. Generally, the PLC groups are defined by when they have a planning period, so we use about 35 minutes of that planning period. We also put stuff, we have a Google Classroom page, and we put stuff out there so people can look at it over the week, come back maybe the next week, and we discuss what we asked them to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Anyone with any questions for Paul?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Next, we have old business.
Excuse me,
That's Blake.
Mr. Chair, could I jump in for a second?
Go ahead.
This is Blake McGurty from Valley View. I just wanted to let you know, I just checked the numbers real quick. We have 234 students enrolled at Valley View, and 52 of them are remote, giving us roughly a percentage of 23% that are remote.
Now, Blake, is that a decrease in remote students from last month, you think, or is it increase?
Oh, we've seen a decrease.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I mentioned up at the top, in terms of the more normal and stable school, for the month, we've seen a decrease in COVID outages in terms of students having to quarantine or be remote. And, we've seen that in our overall numbers as well. We've seen some more students come in.
Good. Good. Well, thank you for that additional input.
No problem.
Moving along to
I do have the Henry Wilson numbers, if that would be helpful.
Go
They
ahead.
have 295 total students, 70 remote. So subtract the 70 from the 295, so 225 and 70.
But in the high school, there's 242 total students?
Yes.
Okay.
Fewer grades than at Henry Wilson.
There's fewer grades at Henry Wilson.
Than at Henry Wilson. High school has 4 grades, Henry Wilson has 5.
Okay. Moving along to old business. We have the policy K kindergarten.
No.
KD-R.
KD-R. The
That's-
letters are
okay.
from the School Boards Association alphabet soup.
Okay,
So,
school district social media website regulations.
yes. And that was in last week's
Right.
packet.
Right. So
That
I'll
was
open it
something
up to
you'd
the
asked to
board at
bring
this
back
point
for
because
discussion.
this is a continuation from our discussion at the last meeting.
I'll just make a quick comment. I understand it's stopping the social media, the impact it has on our principals as far as putting out information. So I'd move to amend the policy now to allow our principals and assistant principals to post notices, fundraisers, anything of that likes without student photographs and without commenting on the Facebook pages, and table it for a later date for discussion. I think we're at a critical juncture that we've got to move through a little higher priority issues. This way they can use it within limitations, they can get information out, we can kind of look at it a little bit more thorough when we have time.
And with Facebook, you can, I know there's an option to have moderated content where somebody can create the content and then it can be approved by another authority that runs the page.
Right.
So that might be an easy way to go about that.
Well, hold on. But isn't that different than what Tim is suggesting?
It is different than what Tim is suggesting, that the principals and assistant principals would be able to post. Moderated content suggests that whatever they would put together, then it would have to come through me or through Jen to be posted.
I think if Mr. Roberts wanted to have posted what he said in tonight's meeting on a high school Facebook page, I'm good with that. And again, principal, vice principal, having access to those pages just for the limited announcements, fundraisers, school closings, any type of emergency update. I think you can manage that kind of as how they do it. Right now, I want to shut down the commenting until we have a chance to look at it, and I want to shut down the student photographs until we have a chance to talk about it.
And I don't believe that commenting has been wide open on most pages anyway. But I will.
The district, I know it isn't necessarily. Some go through, some don't, and we got to be careful there. It's either an all or nothing. And I'd rather see the nothing because it'll keep us out of federal court.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. So the motion is to dial back to previous motion to, I guess, turn it off temporarily as far as
Allowing
posting?
principals and assistant principals access to Facebook
Right.
for announcements and to remove commenting.
Because in the past motion from the board, because of some issues, we had halted it. And this is basically dialing it back to allow limited use until we can convene later on the policies and
Allowing
requirements.
informational text and no student pictures.
Could I offer a friendly amendment that we just limit it to the principals and above?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Give me 1 second, Blake.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, hold on. Tim, he's got a friendly amendment. You'd have to accept it.
I mean, my only concern, and I guess I'd like to hear about it, is if a principal's out sick and we gotta get information out.
Right.
I think if we limit their scope.
Right. I would say that you want as few people to be speaking on behalf of the district as possible, and this is a mode of communication. If a principal is out, I would say it could elevate to the superintendent if needed, and if it's not needed, then it can wait.
That means that I also have to be on all Facebook pages.
Right.
Which you should be if something has to come down.
Right.
Well, and if something has to come down, it typically is going to come through the district Facebook page and the website as well.
Okay. I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, go ahead, Blake.
So I guess my quick question was, and I'm not sure if Mr. Brown was including this in there or not, when it comes to posting things, would it be okay for the principals to post their weekly update on those Facebook pages? Because I know a lot of our parents at Valley View do look at that and may get that information and might overlook it when it comes to email or phone call.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with a weekly summary or what's happening. I think it's the purpose I'm looking at the pages is to get information out to parents without tying the hands of the superintendent that might be in the middle of 10 COVID cases and doesn't have time to deal with it. So until we can take a hard look at this, I'm looking to kind of meet in the middle of saying, you can do this, let's be responsible with it, and as we get through some of the stuff we have to get through, then we'll revisit it.
And I guess my other question, and thank you for clarifying that, I appreciate it. My other question would be, so the parents at Valley View have signed a waiver saying it's okay for their children's picture to be on social media. If we're doing an event at school and there are some pictures that we wanted to post, like for instance, the World Read Aloud Day, not that was mainly virtual, but if we had something going on, and we wanted to put some pictures up of students, just to showcase what was happening within the school and the learning environment setting, would that be okay, or would you prefer us to hold off on that?
At this point, no. I mean, my motion specifically said, no photographs until we have a chance to make that decision and look at, the parameters. I mean, parents do sign kind of a big bulky waiver at the beginning of the school year, but do they know that their child's picture is going to be coming up on Facebook? And do we have students in the district that might come from a divorce situation that dad doesn't know where the kids are, and maybe we shouldn't be putting those up on Facebook? So there's a long discussion that I think the board has to have before that happens.
So,
Okay.
question for you, Blake.
Just so you know, too, we do have a specific piece of paperwork for social media postings, because a big thing in previous years at Valley View were birthday selfies, which we haven't done this year just because of COVID
Distancing.
precautions. But, that's perfectly fine. Again, thank you for reiterating it, and we'll hold off on that. But I'd be happy to send along to the board through Mrs. Vaughn that piece of paperwork that we do have parents sign at the start of the school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, please forward that to Ruth Ellen so we can review. I just would like to see it. But I do agree with Tim. I think at this point, I'm in favor of holding off until we have some time to dig into some of the concerns, we don't think that time is right now. So, any other discussion on the motion? Stan? Any discussion?
Nope, I'm fine.
Okay, not hearing any more discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, stands for, is,
That was a 4.
yeah, so it's 4-0. Thank you. Next we have is the school calendar.
And I believe that is in your packet. What you have is the changed calendar because of the change that has been proposed by the state in our traditional February vacation, which now moves our February vacation to the first week of March, in an effort to keep the weeks separate from Maine and Massachusetts for tourism purposes. They give us, here's the week we want you to use each year.
Who gives us that?
The DOE does. Now, are we
And for the
required?
purpose of, I guess,
Primarily so that we're not hitting the slopes the same time Maine and Massachusetts are, basically. So with that, this is a proposal to move it to the suggested week. My first pushback was, you know what? No, our February vacation is going to be in February, and that's all there is to it. The one issue that we have is that Governor Wentworth is taking the change to their board on the 8th, and is likely to change to the first week in March. We have students who access the Voc Center, and having a different week there does become somewhat problematic. It's not for a large number of students, but it is a number of students who then would have to be attending at least classes there, and then would have a part day here the following week and wouldn't actually get a full week. So
Governor Wentworth is discussing that when?
Governor Wentworth is discussing it on the 8th of March. Happy to put it back until then. It's here for discussion purposes now. We can see if they do indeed make the change or if they wait. But I wanted you to at least see, it's going to be very strange to call February vacation the first week in March, but it is.
now, wouldn't, if you, say, and this board wanted to be consistent when we had February vacation, wouldn't it be a possibility that we say, we're holding off setting it, but this is what we were feeling we were going to stay with, but if you move it to, say, this March week, we may follow you because of the student issue.
Certainly could
indicating
do that. We're not the only district that sends to Governor Wentworth for.
Right, but also indicating to
Center.
them that this is our preference.
Here hasn't been as much with masks. We haven't had the spike in flu that we typically
Right.
have this time of year as well. But oftentimes, having February vacation the last week in February feels like it's a week too late as our flu cases start to go up. Pushing it back a week later than that, and I don't know that anybody's going to say, okay, well, we'll just wear masks next January and
Right.
February.
I mean,
And-
when you said this last week, I wasn't sure what you were referring to, but now that you say that, I don't know if the reasons provided to us are, I feel, significant enough for me to impose something that we don't want. I mean, bending our schedule to suit other states is their travel plans. Wouldn't we want to take care of what our interests are?
Well, and I think in some regards, they feel that is because then it gives us access to things without those other states being in the way. But, again, it's not where I get to make that call necessarily.
So you're saying...
My knee jerk was don't move it, but I also know what the VOC situation is, and I think Mrs. Danito would like to make a comment.
Come on up, Diana. I agree. I think that's more of a reason than worrying about other states' travel plans.
Yeah, I know just from having worked up in the North Country that one of the reasons that we avoided the same break as Maine and Massachusetts was that a lot of families were working in the travel industry, and so they couldn't, they'd be working, so, it made sense that their kids not be off at a time when they couldn't be with them. So that's the only information I know about that, as to why we have chosen different times in New Hampshire for having breaks.
Well, Massachusetts is on vacation this week,
Yep.
and we're scheduled for next week.
Right, Maine is this week, and that's why next year, evidently, theirs is the last week in February, and so
Yeah.
New Hampshire said, oops, we need to move
But I
back a
think-
week further.
I mean, my opinion, I agree with Charlie. I think if you ask any of their kids, they're ready for vacation next week.
Yeah.
And pushing off another week, I don't think it's fair to their kids. If we have to go because Governor Wentworth makes that decision, but I'd like Governor Wentworth to hear maybe a consensus of the board that I'm not really in favor of moving it, but we'll move it if we have to cooperate with your schedule. I also got a couple issues with the calendar.
Well, you might as well take those up
Okay.
at the same time.
Looking at the calendar, and we've got 2 professional development days in August, September, 1 professional development day down in January, and a contract requires 5
The parent conference days count as the other 2,
as professional development days.
per what has been done in the contract for the last at least 20 years.
I mean, I'm not sure I agree with that, but take that up we'll take it up in non-public under legal.
So I guess the question is, just like this year, we decided, you asked us for some additional professional development, and we said, yes, we agree.
Why is it not built in here?
No, I'm like, if 2 of these days have been counting, teacher conference has been counting under professional development, but that's the way we've been doing it.
Parent conference, yeah.
Does that make sense to continue with that, or should we add in a couple of days to get to that 5 days of professional development?
I would certainly be in favor of more days of professional development. Currently, your contract for the teachers is a total of 185 days, which is what's represented here. And so I would not be averse to doing that, but we would certainly need to look at costing out more days of professional development. Or our other option is that when we go under hours as opposed to days, We have more hours built into our calendar than we are required by law. We have about 15 extra days worth of hours. But I'm still required to submit a 180-day student calendar to the state. And then they turn around and say, but you can count hours. But I have to submit a calendar that counts the 180 days because both pieces of legislation are still currently enacted. So while we can count hours, I have to submit this, and then we could go back later and say, okay, we're going to take 2 of these days and count them as professional development, but I have to show the state 180 days before we can do that. Does that make sense to me? Not really, but
I'm not opposed to open up the conversation on, and there is a contingency in the contract that, we can pay them for services over and above the contract. But I think, particularly in this year that we're looking at in front of us, we got a lot of loss of learning, and we got a lot of changes, and we'll talk about that potentially in a little bit. But to say 3 days is enough, when it says 5 days in the contract, I don't think this, regardless of what's been done in the past, I don't see how a teachers' conference is going to be considered professional development.
I don't.
And I'm not looking to short the.
Disagree with you, Tim.
I'm not looking to short the teachers' money, and I just think if we commit to them 5 days, they need 5 days. If we're going to do 3 days professional development and count the 2 days on the parents' conference in a contract in the future, then that's what we need to spell out in the contract. But I think a plain meaning of the contract says we own 5 days. And I think particularly this year we're coming into, we're going to need it.
I don't disagree with you.
So those are my concerns there. I don't know how to address them, but
Now, is it possible we could pose this to the membership and say we'd like to add 2 more days? Are they willing to do that?
I remember the contract. I think we can do it if it's acceptable to them at their per diem rate.
We can certainly do that. If it is not included in the 185 days, we can't require them to be there. So we can offer it, but we can't require them to attend beyond the 185 of the contract. So if we go to 186 or 187 and they choose not to come those last 2 days, they don't get paid for it. But I also don't have that other piece. If we do it by hours, it is doable. And that is where we have gained additional professional development in other years. However, I understand that you're not wanting to take off any of the additional instructional time either. Or at least that's what I'm hearing.
So I guess maybe nothing needs to be resolved tonight. But I think, I agree with Tim, I think we need to spend maybe a little bit more time figuring out if we can find a way to add some more professional development. And I do also agree that we should maybe not make a vote on it tonight, but consensus to the board of what we'd like to do with February vacation and wait for Governor Wentworth to make a decision, knowing what our preference would be, because I think we need to follow their schedule, but they haven't set this yet.
They haven't said it yet. And I don't know, it's possible the member districts may be looking at it the same that we are. I don't know.
Right.
Do you want me to pursue with the Teachers Association, potentially looking at additional days? And that would also possibly mean the paras as well, although they wouldn't need to be included in the days.
I think the paras contract is separate. I'd be interested in hearing from the teachers, because I certainly got a concept of how we can do it now within the contract. They may not like it, but I've got a concept of how we can make that happen. But yeah, I'd like their feedback.
Yeah, I think it should be open to both paras and teachers. I think we have I think it would be beneficial for both groups, the additional time. And if we can work out some agreement with them, you know, I'd like to also see it added.
How many days are you looking at proposing?
I think getting it to the 5.
Yeah, I think we need to minimum have the 5 days.
Okay.
I mean, not saying we can't work it into the schedule based upon 180 days, and then put some half-days in it to get to that period, but
I mean, we do have half-days in here that do count as instructional days as far as the state is concerned. So
Right, but-
we have half-days, one,
But
two.
at this point, I'd like to find a solution without changing student time. And,
Understood.
you know, so, but I'm open to ideas. I think the board is too, but. So I'll make a motion to table this and send Governor Wentworth an indication of what our preference is and say we'll be awaiting their decision.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain, Mr. Chair, as I just logged on.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Thanks for joining us.
I guess I'll make a motion to authorize the superintendent to contact the teachers' union regarding the potential for the 2 professional development
And the
days.
Perry's Union?
And the parents' union. yeah.
I'll second. Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that was
Yes.
Tim and Charlie?
Yep.
Okay. And then to broach both teachers and
Yeah.
Yep.
parents, okay.
Next, we had pre-bid for electrical and for the generator. It was in our folder. Brian, did you get that email I sent you?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
A little late, as usual, but I just want to at least give you some names to add to
Yeah.
that list.
Yeah, I already had this up in the folder, so I'll add that to the ones.
I did, let me see if I can pull it up here. So I saw that on you had a June 1st time?
I just threw that in there. I didn't know
Okay.
exactly what date you were looking for.
Well, I didn't know
we were
if
gonna
you
do
had a
some-
chance to figure out what was the acceptable date to be back to.
I'll
Police service
know,
school.
I'll know Wednesday night. It's the
Okay.
next meeting, so.
So, yeah, I think we need to work back from that date. And I guess the only other thing that I didn't see in here is that we were planning on any indication that we were going to have a site walk for those potential bidders, but,
Yeah, that'll be in the RFP.
okay,
So this is really just a 30,000-foot view of what you're looking for.
right. Anyone have any questions or concerns on the,
I'm good with it.
Jen, our remote computer is wanting to restart. Thank you.
Does that have to be restarted? Because if it does, we need to recess under the emergency order.
No, it didn't.
Okay.
She just told it not to.
so,
Okay.
yeah, so on the
I
bottom.
don't have the mouse on here. She's got
Yeah.
it there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, there's a couple of reminders on there, but I don't think we're gonna need a multi-year information regarding this contract. But I think the other ones are certain non-performance severance clause, definitely.
The multi-year would just be if anything crossed fiscal years for us, which
Right.
it could, depending upon time of installation. Hopefully it won't, but it's one of
Because
the...
you could move it and still not install it for months, depending
Right.
on when the availability or something, so. But anyway, it was on the policy.
Right,
So
but-
that's why it was.
Right, but based upon the funding that we are gonna fund this out of capital reserve,
Right.
Right.
then that non-appropriation clause may not be required.
True.
Because funding would,
Right.
unless something catastrophic meant that we had to use it elsewhere.
Right, and the concern is if you have that on this bid for what we're doing, that may cause people not to bid on it at this scale. Because we're only looking at a smaller number and we have that in capital reserve, I would not want to put that in non-appropriation clause because that would basically, for somebody who's not experienced to it, would go, so what does this mean? That if I start the job, I get halfway in and it's done, you know?
Then it means that we cannot do a multi-year because we're required to do that by law. So if we choose not to include that clause, then we have to make sure.
But it's not
that
really a
done
multi-year
within-
contract.
It's done by June 30th.
Right, it would need to be done within the fiscal year it was bid.
No.
Well, no, because, well,
What do we do with Homeland Security?
No, because.
That is true.
Right,
Okay,
because
because that was grant
if
funded
it was
on those,
bid and
yeah.
it was not completed, it would be encumbered.
It could be encumbered, right. Thank you.
So it's not really a multi-year, it's not intended to be span a multi-year
Correct,
contract. It may
correct.
span multiple years
But
under
it's
one
not a
purchase
multi-year
order.
contract. Okay. Hopefully it won't take several years to get this done.
No, but if it spanned a couple of years, I mean, over 1 year into the next, it would be, if it was approved in, say, 2021 and completed in 2022, it would encumber those funds.
Correct.
So that would need to be required. And I think that would be, for some of the potential smaller businesses that might be bidding on this, they would not be used to working with that and not, they may say, well, I don't know what that is and I'm not going to bid. So, and I don't think it's required here. Everything else seemed good. I said we do need to have, I think, a site walk. And that's going to be backfit, kind of backed up from the timetable that hopefully you'll hear about Wednesday night. So I'll make a motion to have staff proceed with the finalized bid RFP.
Second?
Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Stan and Joel?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
So we're just going to kind of hold off on the timeline yet until we hear more.
Well, you're right.
I can work it into the rough draft of the RFP
Yeah,
if you
I
want.
mean, it's really going to.
Because we've got plenty of time to
Right. We just got to backfit to their time. We don't want to say, yeah, their deadline is here and we're not ready for it. We've got to factor in whatever that deadline is.
Plus, I want to get some time to sit down with Larry and really narrow this down and get in there what he knows a little more than I do when it comes
Right.
to this, but
Yeah.
I'll do the writing, he'll do the talking, and we'll get it together.
And the other thing is we really want to wait till that town election vote on that warrant article for the other 50,000.
Yeah.
If we can get it through that process. If not, we're going to find another way to pay for it.
So next we have on here, which I had Ruth Ellen put on, was grading policy, which we had some discussion on last week, and I just wanted to have it on here for any continued discussion. I don't know if you had any thoughts you want to start with, Ruth Ellen?
Yes. One of the things that I wanted to clarify is that, oops, sorry, pull this up. As we have been discussing grades, really at all three buildings, and our grading practices and how those align to best practice and what needs to be done. At no point was the intent to change or to flout board policy. And I have sent a clarifying email to Henry Wilson today outlining that the fixed 12 around a 0 not being awarded was off the table. And made that clear to staff that that's not something that we're pursuing, that is not where that's going. Because there was some question there, and I want to make sure that that was clarified with staff and that it's also clarified with the board. We'll talk more about some of the specifics within.
Now, is that the policy in the other two schools?
The other two schools are not looking at that as where they're going either.
Right, so if a student has not completed work, by the time deadline that is set, then they would be given a 0.
Well, let me read to you what I sent to the staff, because I think that may clarify. Because the issue, as I see it, is really not so much, I mean, It's the idea that a 0 oftentimes either represents a kid just, give me the 0, I'm not going to do it. Or, I'm not going to chase this, I'm just going to give the 0 on a staff part. And I want to make sure that there's a very clear understanding that there's not an opportunity here to get out of doing this, nor to get out of holding the student accountable, that if a 0 is going to be given, and there is a pattern of missed assignments, that there must be parent contact. It needs to be documented. If there's a pattern of 2 or 3 in a row, that this is, okay, kid's starting to dig a hole, there should be a parent meeting set up, and there should be a plan for how do we get kid back on track here. It shouldn't just be 0 and move on. It should definitely be, that's a flag that we have a deeper issue that has to be addressed.
But are we,
And-
sorry to interrupt you. Are we seeing those flags? Because looking at the first quarter statistics, when I asked for them, that appeared to be a surprise. So are we doing that intervention as a district that we need to do, or is that an area identified where we need improvement and we're moving in that direction?
It's an area that we've identified. We have pockets that definitely need improvement. And it is something that we are clarifying with staff to say, this is the expectation. This is what needs to be happening. We are asking for documentation of parent contact. When did you contact? How frequently have you contacted? How have you contacted? Was it just well, I left a message, but I have no idea if it got through? Or did you actually have a dialogue with the adult in the household? And what was the outcome of that? And now what's the next step? To make sure that this is being addressed, not just, well, I picked up a phone, didn't get an answer, 0, on we go. Not okay. I want to make sure that it's very clear that the expectations are that student needs are being met. And now, I have a tremendous number of teachers who spend hours doing exactly that and making sure that kids get exactly what they need. I have some folks who are showing improvement in that area. But I want to make it clear that that's not something that is okay to let go. And
Yeah, go ahead and read what you said you were going to read us, what was sent.
Yep, I can do that. So, clarification. Fix 12 is off the table. This is a larger discussion around full reporting structures that will need admin input, and board approval as the grading policy is the board's purview. I hope this clarifies any questions. 0s are to be used if and when parents have been contacted via email and/or phone, and this is documented. 2, there is a plan in place for the student to submit the work. 3, parent meetings are called if there is a pattern of 2 or 3 missing assignments. Don't wait. And at the end of the term, the student receives an incomplete with a time-bound plan for credit recovery explained in a parent meeting before an F is recorded. It needs to be about the student learning, not about getting it off the books.
So let me ask you a question about the last part.
And then there's more there, but go ahead.
When you talked about, so a student has not completed the work. He's given a time frame to complete that work,
Yes,
and you used the word credit recovery.
yes.
And can the student recover that to 100% of the available credits for that? Or is it discounted based upon how late it is? Or is it, the student can be right to the last day and completes it and get full credit for that assignment? Or is it weighted?
I think you
Just a
look.
question.
I think, and that's something that I did not
Okay.
specify here, I think there are opportunities for both, depending upon circumstance. I think as you're looking at, in general,
Yeah.
to say that if we're looking at what a student knows and is able to do, and we are grading that. To say that we're going to take off points for not being on time, you can certainly receive a separate grade for timeliness, that habit of work, absolutely. Record that it's not done on time. But to say that you only have half of your English knowledge because this was late, you may have it all, but what you need to work on is timeliness, not necessarily the punctuation. The other piece of that is that if we are looking at having grades that truly reflect where a student is, I mean, you may have that at the end of that time-bound, it still isn't done. And if there's nothing that is a catastrophic reason for it not being done, I'm not saying the F can't happen, but it shouldn't be just a, not going to chase them.
I absolutely agree. I agree with pretty much everything you said. These are trying times, and we can't just be lulled into saying it's okay that a student isn't participating because of these times.
Exactly.
Because then we're leaving students behind. They maybe want to be willingly left behind because they're not participating, but that's our job to get them to participate.
Correct. I mean, it is a two-way street, but we better show that we've made every effort and done some to get there. Because we're in the business of getting kids where they need to be, not leaving them behind.
Charlie?
Tim?
Let me express my frustration and take it for what it's worth, but at the end of first semester, we noticed some negative results that we weren't anticipating, or at least this board noticed. Some of the truancy issues have gotten better and worked harder at, but I guess we're now at the end of the second semester, and I don't know where we're at. Are we better? Are we worse? Are we the same? And I don't think there's any doubt, looking at the studies and listening to the experts, that we've experienced, because of the pandemic, some learning loss. So I'm going to propose tonight as a committee, and I want the superintendent to sit on the committee, I want 2 board members, and I want the 3 building principals. And I want to identify what is our learning loss and what's our truancy within the district. And how do we get beyond that? And I'll just throw out an example that should be talked about at the committee, and at some point in time, the union's going to have to be involved. But if we have a child who just doesn't want to participate during the school remote session, and they're not doing well, do we allow that to continue, or do we say, hey, if you're going to get promoted, you're going to summer school? So, are we just dealing with summer school now for special ed, and do we need to open that up?
We have both that we've offered.
Okay.
Offered or required?
Well,
Because if a student's not going to advance because of his grades, is that
it's
offered or is?
Well, it's a requirement to advance, but we can't say you have to be there.
Okay.
They may not be there. I would also suggest that if you're going to be looking at learning loss and where students are, it would be appropriate to have Mrs. Donito's input as well.
Yep, no issues with that at all. I'll take as many intelligent people as we can get. But I think we've got a problem, and I think this needs to be our #1 priority. We've got a learning loss. How do we fix it? We can't stop it, but how do we make it better? So, after-school programs, late buses, do we have a disciplinary problem that we need to look at and address? There's truancy numbers going up and down. Some of those the diversion program may be helped with, but let's come up with a plan and start now. We know we've got funding, and I don't want to see February 15th turn into June and our kids are gone.
Right.
And then we've got a bigger learning loss to deal with next year.
One of the things that we are looking at is developing our tracking so that we know who's been worked with after school and by whom, so that we can then in turn say, we can offer additional tutoring here because you've taken advantage of this. And because we need to make sure that we don't have somebody who's being paid to tutor who wasn't doing the after school or before school piece working with students, but also that we have students who are doing what they can before they do the additional programming. We need to look at our staffing, and we're starting to do that. I have some teachers who have come forward and said they would be willing to tutor. Busing, we're going to need to look at how we staff that and what that looks like, but I think an after-hours bus is an important thing for us to do. And whether that means that we are looking to purchase additional buses, and hey, if I could find additional bodies to drive those buses at the same time, that'd be awesome. Because that's been an issue. If I have one driver out, we kind of have a very precarious situation. But certainly looking to get an after-school program and additional academic supports in place, I'd love to see if I could do it before the end of March.
And some of it might not be after school. You know, I've looked at school districts that, you know, teachers go home, they take a break, and all of a sudden we're back at night school and parents are there, so that parents can intervene with some of what the kids are doing if you're in a remote environment. So, I mean, those are the discussions that I think with the administrative and the board team that we can put on the table. I'd like to have them in person. I'd like to do them weekly, and I'd like to make this a priority and come up with some answers across our entire spectrum. You know, from special ed to high honors. If we got a high honor child that's failing, we need to fix that. And
Josh, you had something?
Yeah, I think a committee to review the damage done by the China virus pandemic would be a great idea. I'd honestly love to be on it. I think it'd be a good opportunity to identify the damage and mitigate it, identify ways to mitigate it as well.
It's certainly, I think, a viable idea, and one of the benefits is we need to come up with a plan to spend these additional resources from the government as efficiently and best as possible. And this committee would potentially be doing some of that front-end work to help guide the entire board with suggestions. So I would certainly be in favor of it. Joel and Stan? Any thoughts or discussion?
I guess my question is, Ruth Ellen, this type of thing isn't happening at the building level. I mean, what does the core team do at the high school? Is there a core team now, and what's their function? And these things aren't happening at the other buildings?
Diana, did you want to come up?
Sure. So there are core team meetings, and we do discuss students that are at risk, general education and special education. Special focused, obviously, on special education because that's the population of people that are meeting there. All buildings have been following their truancy policy. We've been setting up meetings to have parents come in. Whether parents show up or not, we've then been doing home visits to leave a nice little postcard on their doors saying we want to meet with you again. If that gets ignored, then the call goes into DCYF, and there things begin to slow down a little bit. DCYF is very overwhelmed right now with the number of calls they're getting regarding kids that are remote or kids that are absent. We've had a meeting just on Friday about a family that had gotten involved with DCYF. DCYF has checked in with them. And then the last 2 days, we've made sure the student had a Chromebook to get back online. I went to the house today, dropped off the Chromebook, talked to the family. They were going to get the kid online, and the kid didn't get online. So then we're back into the whole process again. So it's unfortunately, it's taking a lot longer to get kids moving forward than we really want them to. The parents that come in admit that this is a struggle. This is something they want their kids online. They want their kids working. We say, hey, come on in. We will meet you at the door. We will do all these things to get you to the place you need to be. Some kids have become very anxiety prone because they spent a lot of time at home and now they can't really get themselves out of the room or out of their apartments or homes. So yeah, more than willing to have conversations about it, and I've talked about it with special education directors as well. Everybody is working on it. Unfortunately, it's not a fast process.
So it sounds like, I know in past discussions, we've kind of said, okay, the next level is to go to like a DCYF to get assistance.
Yeah.
But because they're being overwhelmed and they're not able to respond in a timely manner, should we consider modifying our approach? I mean,
I'm open to anything.
because, I mean, it
What
may,
does that look like?
right, so it may be, okay, it may be, because apparently, okay, this is our next step, but that step isn't functioning the way it's intended to. So it may be, while we're doing this, sound like you were, we're going to continue along this line to supplement what they may be trying to assist us with. I
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely. I mean, we will send the student assistance program counselor out to go do home visits. They'll send emails. They'll, make phone calls. It's counselors doing the same. I mean, everybody is really, I look at some of the log entries for these kids, and there have been numerous contacts. And the family just kind of goes into hiding. And if you can't get them to answer the door, you kind of get stuck. And then if DCYF, puts them on the list and they get to them, but they don't get a quick follow-up thereafter, you're still kind of spinning your wheels. But I'm open to anything.
Yeah.
And we're not just waiting for DCYF.
Right.
I mean,
No, we are still
continue
connecting.
to reach out and make contact. It's not, well, it's DCYF's problem now, we're done. Yeah.
I think we can talk about it in committee, but my vision is, if we get to the point where we're picking up the phone, calling DCYF, at that point, we should be charging the parent with truancy. Because,
Diana turned around on that one, yes.
that's what Rochester did. The problem with the truancy is, at one time, you could file a petition for truancy, and then they changed the law requiring the school districts to do a lot more work, which doesn't really help the student, because while we're doing all that work, they're still truant. So at some point in time, when we get to the process, enough is enough, we've done our work, let a judge or let a parent go in front of a judge and explain, this is why my child's not in school. Either be the parent or pay the piper.
And that doesn't necessarily speed up our process, because our courts are also fairly backlogged. But it's another step that we could certainly consider.
I mean, personally, I'm out of options. I mean, I know
Yeah.
people are making the effort all the time.
I'd like to have Ian Brito from Rochester come out to one of these meetings to help with the truancy, because they did a fairly decent program down there when they started charging, and guess what? It worked. And a lot bigger community and a lot bigger problem than we're having. And I think we need to start looking outside the box to address those learning losses. My other consideration is, when the school board set the policy on remote education, we said we're going to allow the parents to make a choice up until we need an intervention. And if a child's truant, that's intervention. And hey, you're coming back in school, or you're truant. And I think we have, as a board, the process of, we don't want to do that, but as a last resort, if we have to say you're coming in school, I think we can say you're coming in school.
Well, I mean, I think you can make a reasonable case. If the student and with the intervention that we've tried and contacting the parent, if the student is not there remotely, then this may be, like I said, this may be when you haven't, done any of this, and you haven't responded, and your child has been truant in remote, it may be an opportunity or a requirement to say it's no longer an issue where you need to be here.
I think there's two parts to that, because oftentimes if you can't get a student to be on camera remotely, you're also not going to get them through the doors here. And you might, but I would want to make sure that we have legal vet our
Oh, yeah.
coming back in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that we have that other piece, and it may take the truancy charge, because we didn't start having truancy issues when we started going remote. They certainly ramped up,
Right.
but we have been dealing with truancy post-pandemic, pre-pandemic.
Right.
It's not
But
just.
now it seems like, I'm just going by what some concerns I have, is we're having truancy where it's intermittent, where somebody is missing the first 3 periods or whatever, classes, the first class every day remotely, or they're bouncing in and out of their daytime schedule. So they're some of the time, right? But they're basically truant the rest of the time, where typically maybe they're not here to stay, not just here 3 periods. They're more,
Well, we may have them come in late, and they're here for the end of the day.
right. But,
yeah.
here we have potentially students that are participating when they want to, or when they feel like getting out of bed. And I don't know if that's a large portion of some of this or not.
There is some of that. We've been successful in prosecuting a student on a CHIN's petition when they were doing exactly what you were talking about. Because we have a policy regarding how many classes equal a day, so we were ahead of that one. We were successful in prosecuting that, so that individual now is on conditional release to the end of the school year. And we've had a couple that are like that.
And when did that process start on this?
That process, it started back in the fall when
Okay.
the student was being absent, and then once we get that all pulled together, part of the problem too in the courts is that because of COVID, that usually I think it's 5 days within which to respond to a petition for CHINs, and you have to schedule the hearing. Well, they're not doing it that way anymore. They've suspended that, so now I can't even go to the courthouse. I have to, mail to them our petition and the evidence. They then schedule an appointment. They send me the information to go bring the PD to have the people served. So that's also where we're getting an extended period of time. So it's unfortunate. And if the first, conversation we had in court was, well, you know what? We served you with the RSA, so we're now putting on the table the potential to, charge you for violation of that. Because we usually get at least 2 hearings. One is, the first initial hearing and the appearance, and the kid will plead not true. And then the second one is usually pretty quickly thereafter. So once we, finally get in court, things can move fairly quickly.
The second hearing has to be held within 30 days.
But are they
Done in a while.
violating that? Are they holding to that 30 days?
Well, the second appearance is usually happening much quicker. It's that first appearance that is taking longer. Traditionally, that first appearance would occur within 5 days of me actually bringing in the petition to court.
But they suspended that because of COVID.
Because I can't even go into the courtroom. I have to mail everything to them. And so you get that delay, and then they'll, when they can, they will schedule it, which can be, I've had up to 3 weeks go by before.
Well, maybe someday it'll get back to where you can actually go into the public buildings you pay for.
I look forward to that.
So, getting back to the question before the board, I guess, does the board feel that this is a good idea to start a committee of building supervisors and staff, other required staff, and 2 school board members? I think it's a good idea. I think that it will assist the board in getting to solutions faster and be more informed. So,
I'd love to serve on it, and I'd love to see it weekly.
So I'd like to make a motion to form that committee.
Second.
2 school board members and at least 1 person from each building, along with Ruth Allen and Diana Donato, right? And anybody else that you feel is appropriate for that.
We may need to drag Brian in only because if we're talking about programming and costing, we may need some program.
Typically, costing of programming comes from Diana and I
Okay.
to him, so.
Okay.
We'll let him play with DL numbers for right now.
All right.
Okay, is there a second?
Yes, second.
Any discussion? Joel and Stan?
Now, what is the board's thought on frequency of meetings and when they would take place?
Tim was thinking every week. I don't know if that's, I think it's got to kind of work around staff and their availability as far as the timing. I don't have an issue with the frequency. It's really going to be with, who can serve on it. Myself, I don't think I have the time. available. But I think if it's any longer than that, you're just not going to get to the goal where we need to be. But I guess, Ruth Ellen, if you were going to have a meeting time for this committee, when would you think would fit in you guys' schedule?
Tuesday and Wednesday are staff meeting days. Thursday, we have a standing admin meeting from 3 to 5. Mondays and Fridays are probably our only days left. Mondays are typically board meeting days. Fridays, I'm scrambling to get out the agenda, but a lot of that falls to Cheryl, and I'm okay with that too. We can certainly poll the admin team and see if they have a preference. I think we need to have it as a time-bound meeting as well. A tight agenda, we meet for an hour and we're done. I don't think this should be a marathon.
The only problem with the non-marathon, Ruth Ellen, is we've got kids that are losing education. And I understand that the district's busy, I understand the board's busy. That has to be our number one focus. And if our first meeting takes 3 hours to get to those tick marks and our second one is an hour, I think that's the way it goes. But, I mean, looking at board meetings, the joke is, hey, we might be out of here by 10 o'clock, when the reality is we leave at 11:30. And I think it's been consistent since the beginning. So this is an area that we've got to jump in and we've got to fix, or we're going to lose.
So let's at least get back to the motion on the table, because I think the time and place and people will have to be sorted out later. So get back to discussion on the motion. Going once, going twice.
This is Stan. I think it's good in theory, but I really think it's just an unnecessary meeting. I think the faculty is already taking care of thinking about this. I don't think an additional meeting is going to get us anywhere.
So show me.
I would hate to overtax everybody else that's working so hard. I mean, we're already doing things for students. We're already trying. There's nothing new going to be gained by having yet another meeting.
Stan, can you give me an example of what we've done since the end of the first quarter to improve our learning loss?
I think all of the things that Diana has mentioned, each kid is individual, and you're trying to do different things to get them. To participate in ways, whether they're in remotely learning or in the classroom. It's each kid is individual, and I don't think you're going to get it together by meeting. You have to. Each child has their own sort of team working on them, and they're already doing that. They're trying. And I think this is an extra burden that will just not get anywhere.
I must have missed something.
Okay. Anyone else with any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm going to vote no. I'm going to vote no.
Okay, motion passes 3-2. Do we have any school board members that'd like to be on this committee?
I do.
I would love to.
So I'll make a motion to nominate Tim and Josh. Is there a second? Well, I'll just start with one at a time. I'll nominate Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain.
Abstain. So I'll nominate Josh for the second person.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain.
One abstention. Okay, so I guess you guys can confer and get it going. Run your schedule.
So can we leave the scheduling you, Ruth Ellen, with what works for the staff, and then we'll make ourselves available around your schedule, if that makes sense?
Are you looking to try to do this before vacation or after?
That's next week.
Logistically, I think right after would be.
How how many of our executive team, our building principals, are going to actually be on vacation? Is that a scheduled week of vacation for them, or are they going to be in the buildings?
Most take some time. I'm out next week.
Okay. If we could get a meeting in this week to start the process and get some thought process going, that,
Maybe just, even if it's a brief organizational meeting.
yeah,
Yeah, because it may be good to at least figure out some common goals,
yeah,
even if it's related to where we think we're going to supplement based upon federal funds. I think that's important to kind of say, okay, these are the areas, whether it's after-school program, whether it's, what are we going to have available for students that need additional time through the summer to move on. Just some things that have been discussed and potential other ideas, so.
and I
But I'll
think,
leave that to you guys to work through.
and I think also, I mean, the building principals know their buildings, and they know their problems.
Oh, and I
And
think
if
we
we can-
also need to have our curriculum director included
Yep,
there too.
that's fine.
because she's in charge of learning.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I think if we kind of say to the building principals, you know, what do you need? Kind of like we said to Larry when COVID hit, what do you need? So if we understand the needs, then we can start pushing towards some of the resources that's going to get us ahead. That's just, and I think the first meeting's perfect if we can do it this week. If not, then right after vacation.
Why don't we look tentatively, and I will clear it with my staff, but say 1:30 on Friday?
Yep.
And depending upon what the weather ends up doing, if it's looking somewhat inauspicious, then we will either figure out a way to do it remotely or back it up. But
I prefer,
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Joel.
Oh, sorry, Tim,
Go ahead.
sorry.
I was just going to say, I'd prefer to do it in person. My experience with remote.
no, I'm just saying, if the weather gets bad enough
On
that we're
Friday.
all physically here, then
Yeah,
it would likely be backed up.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Joel.
I don't know who this is a question for. Anybody could, I guess, potentially answer it. Is this, as a result of this committee's work, is there a possibility that a student could, well, Tim, I'm going to ask you, do you expect with this committee's work to have conversations about specific students and issues going on with specific students?
I don't think we have to. I think FERPA is protected. I don't think we really have a need to know within this committee. And I think we can talk generally without student names, you know.
Okay.
But
The reason I asked that was because if we were going to go down that road, I was going to suggest one board member on the committee with the term just escaped me. With a backup, with an alternate. Excuse me, thank you. With an alternate, just because if there was a potential. For example, with the athletic committee, in the past, when we've had to meet with a student and a parent to do any type of restorative justice, we've not had both members present from the board level, just in case that came to the board level. You wouldn't have already 2 members out of the 5 that already had some contact with the student and the issues prior to a potential hearing. But if you don't think it's going to get specific, then I don't need to. My question's answered.
Potential for having to recuse
Right.
yourself.
I think it should be centered around policy, procedure, and approach, and not so much on a case-by-case basis, because that's where we need to be going, is assisting in direction for this board and the school district as a whole, not so much on a case-by-case.
Yeah.
Anything else on, we were started about the grading policy. Did anyone have any other discussion on that? I did have 2 other things on my list, but I know we kind of got off track, but.
And the only thing around grading that I'd like to see at some point in time is we just finished another marking period, and I'd like to see comparisons between first and second and where we're at, and I think that'll help where we're trying to go.
And I guess the one thing that I would like to see is you described and gave us some detail on the grading approach. And I would like to see that kind of more completely, to understand it, so that I assume we have an approach that is consistent in all three schools. I mean, it may be tailored based upon the age appropriateness, but whatever that is, then I think it's good for us board members to be aware of that and knowledgeable and be able to basically fill in any questions we might have. Regarding just like a few of the questions that I asked, for at least for myself to become as more informed. And
So you're asking that to be a formal presentation?
no, I think that you can just, if it's not detailed already, it may be, based upon the districts, this is our approach, and that has gone out to staff, and if we can receive a copy of that, then I think that will spur us to any questions that we may have to educate ourselves regarding different topics, and it may follow some other discussion in, I think, maybe where we're going, and whether or not, we feel that we're going to get there with what we currently have, or what, because what I've been hearing is this is where we're at, and, we can go through the list of the 15 reasons for broken grades. This one was step 12 we were talking about. But, there's got to be a progression from here to where we wanted to go with this, and, that will be after this. Saying, okay, understanding this and agree or disagree, or getting more educated on some of these points of what you're setting for policy, or at least had established.
Policy is yours,
Right.
procedures ours, yep.
So that we are knowledgeable and can field any questions if we get them from residents or parents. I think that would be helpful for me and the board. So that's the only other thing regarding that topic, because you've talked about it, but I'd kind of like to see the whole thing so that I understand it better. Anyone else on grading? Okay, I've got a couple small ones. One, we had gotten an email, and I don't think this went out to the entire board, from the town regarding us using some sand.
Yes.
Apparently, we've been going downtown and getting sand for miscellaneous needs as we need it, for walkways and so forth. And it, based upon an email that came back from staff at the town side, it seems apparent that we did not have a working agreement for that extra sand we were taking.
And I've discussed this with Larry,
Yeah.
and we are, we don't need to go to the town for it. He's got an alternative, so.
What's that?
I was not aware of it.
Well, I didn't know if we had the need. I had no problem of like this board submitting, I talked to Ruth Ellen, submitting a letter of request saying, hey, this is what our incremental need is for additional sand. Can we get that from the town, or do we need to provide it for ourselves?
I'm
So,
gonna contact Cardinals and see if we need some, we'll have some delivered that we can use on site.
hey, if you think that's the best approach,
Yep.
okay? Because I can go the other route. Because I think it's just a little miscommunication. And I think if we told the town what our need was, I think they'd be more than willing to help out, because it's all getting paid by the same people.
Basically, one of my guys thought he was helping out. He was getting,
Yeah.
when we empty salt bags, he was putting some sand, getting sand,
Yeah.
putting in bags to put around parking spots and stuff
Yeah.
in the morning in front of the schools. That
Yeah.
was basically what it was for.
Yeah, I know, I certainly have no issue with that. And like I said, if you guys are all set with a way to resolve it, that's fine, but otherwise I don't have any issue with going before the town to request some additional resources, so. It's up to you
Larry
guys.
thought we were good, so.
Okay.
We're good.
guess that's all I got. Anyone with anything else?
I'll go one. I think there's been several questions posed by the community about whether it's appropriate for school board meetings to be in person, given that learning is in person. And I think at this time, that criticism is probably warranted after a year. I think in-person school board meetings have more fruitful debate, desirable results, and with that, I'd like to motion to end the exception to the physical quorum rule under Governor Sununu's EO and return to the regular meetings.
Well, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second for discussion.
Okay, so I guess this, Ruth Ellen, what have you seen, or Brian, as far as other communities' approach to this? Are they still, have some communities gone back to in-person meetings, or are other communities still staying under the emergency order and having hybrid such as we have here?
I think it's all over the place.
I know Oyster River's been back in for months, although we are remote this week because the superintendent got quarantined. So,
Selectmen are back in. Budget committee's meeting full board.
Okay, so this is not unheard of?
no.
It's not unheard of.
I wasn't keeping tally.
I guess,
I don't want to talk about other board meetings, but
You don't do that for excitement?
it's exciting enough.
I guess my only comment would be, there is going to be times when we have to call an emergency meeting, and in the event that a member is traveling and we need an emergency meeting, does that prevent us from invoking the emergency rule? Certainly the exception to the rule, so if something comes up Thursday night that as chair, you call an emergency meeting and I'm out, not within travel distance to the community.
Now, what is allowed as far as members being remote in the standard meeting?
In a standard meeting, we have to have a physical quorum
And you
in
have to
order
vote.
for the others to be in either via computer or telephone.
Okay, so if we had one member, or in this case, 2 members out of 5, that were not able to attend for various reasons, they could call in if it was not an emergency meeting.
Yes.
Doesn't that have to be voted on by the board?
It needs to be, the board needs to vote to have them come in remotely, yes.
Every meeting, or just as?
At that meeting. At that meeting.
Okay.
So you need to acknowledge the physical quorum and then say we have members who would like to join remotely, and the group needs to vote to allow that.
The budget committee does that all the time.
Yeah.
So, I agree with the motion. I just don't want to shoot us in the foot. If an emergency comes up and we have to, and we can't get a quorum physically here,
Yeah.
but we got to deal with the emergency, do we make that exception to, or do we leave that at the discretion of the chair?
Well, and the one issue that you may have, like Oyster, you have to have me present to meet. And if you have to be in person and I can't remote in, then you can't meet until I can. Because the physical quorum part doesn't include me. I don't plan to get sick, just letting you know.
Well, neither do
But-
I, but
Right,
it doesn't
but-
mean it's not going to happen.
That's true. That's true.
So I guess if the motion were to pass, could we hold if we needed to in an emergency meeting? Say if we couldn't get a quorum because of travel or weather? Under his orders?
Under his orders, I think you would still be able to do so. You would have to post it as an emergency meeting, the same as we've posted these.
So what if?
Posted under emergency orders.
So if the meeting was posted as a standard meeting on Friday, weather was not permitted all the members to be there on Monday, say a Monday night, could the chair change that to an emergency meeting compliant with the governor's requirement?
We would have to repost it as soon as you knew that it wasn't going to be able to be done, because even emergency meetings have to be posted as soon as reasonably able with as much advance notice as possible. So it depends upon at what point you decided that you weren't going to be meeting in person.
So if we were to accomplish that, to post it as soon as possible, say on a Monday afternoon, this meeting is now an emergency meeting based upon the weather.
Well, the weather isn't one of the reasons that you are given to be able to go remotely. You're able to go remotely under emergency orders because of the governor's standing emergency order due to COVID. Weather isn't one of those reasons. You would think it would be, but under the RSA it isn't.
So you'd have to comply with those
So you would
reasons.
have to comply with that. If you already had it posted as a remote meeting, then you could do.
And the public would have to be able to speak.
The public would have to be able to
Right,
come in.
similar to what we're doing.
By this, yes.
Well, the public, we have YouTube, and we have,
We have YouTube only if we are in person here.
you know,
But
We have Google anywhere, but we don't have, I can't bring the broadcast booth with us.
yeah. But I'm saying for a standard meeting, you can have a member of the community that we're all here. They may not want to come in, but we have the phone line available to them. So I think it's a good idea.
Right.
On a regular meeting, to have the phone number call in and continue that throughout the process.
I mean, if we have a regular meeting here, we can continue with the Google Meet also, in the short term. I mean, I don't know if we need it in the long term, but.
I got no confidence in that meeting system.
So getting back to the motion, it certainly has spurred some thoughts. So in Oyster River's case, the superintendent couldn't be there, so they postponed.
No, they went virtual.
Because the
'Cause
superintendent can be there remotely,
Okay.
just can't be in person with the rest of the board. Because the superintendent's presence in the meeting is required to hold the board
And we
meeting.
posted it as a virtual meeting. We posted, if you want your
Okay.
public comments, you have to have it in by a certain time.
So if this motion were to pass, then we would have to make sure that we would post any necessary emergency meeting correctly and as soon as possible.
Yes.
So if this passes and we had a meeting and it had to go remote based upon based upon what are allowable reasons,
Yeah. We have
we'd have to.
we have
post
some
that.
more hoops to jump through, yes.
Right. Okay. Any other discussion on a motion?
I do.
Go ahead, Joel.
So that means that the meeting would not be remotely available to anyone, correct?
You mean a board member?
I'm talking about, let me clarify that. People have always been able to view meetings
Right.
with certain, if they have, certain ways of accessing it. But would remote participation, public participation no longer be available?
The intent of my motion is not to remove public participation. Public participation would still be accessible through the phone, and you could watch the meeting via YouTube.
And be here in person.
And you can also be here in person, which I thoroughly encourage.
Then the intent of the motion is what then?
In-person participation as school board members.
That being said,
Because it provides more fruitful debate.
Okay, so are you admitting that due to your absence and your recent work assignment, you weren't able to be effective?
I am admitting that all three of us have been less effective than we could have been because we have been remote and not in person.
Okay, well.
Can you prove that?
For the record, I will not admit that I've been less effective, but if you want to admit you have, that's fine and I respect that, but I'm not admitting that I'm less effective.
I don't believe I am either, and I'm kind of offended by the accusation.
Okay, now, that would still not remove the ability if a member is not in attendance to be participating in the meeting, because that's still allowed if we have a quorum.
if you have a physical quorum, they can call in, or we could set it up this way. And if you just have board members here as opposed to public participation via Google, that's also a possibility. Meaning that the link would only go to the board members, it wouldn't be a public link. And then the public would have access via the phone, which is, I think, where Josh is going. But correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong.
Okay.
So, but as I heard your original motion, I did not hear where we would basically no longer be supporting a Google Meet.
That is the intent of my motion.
So your motion is to have,
The motion is to require a physical quorum, make the meetings accessible via YouTube link, public participation via phone line, and that's it.
and in
Or in
person.
person.
Or in person.
And that was seconded by Tim.
And that's, I'm sorry, just to clarify, and so that's for staff as well? Staff would have to be present to participate in the meetings?
Or they could call in.
They can't all call in at once.
We don't talk to them all at once generally.
Well, that's true. They would need to be
So-
watching online and then call
Yeah.
in. Yep.
Interesting. Any other discussion on the motion?
I just am objecting to why we're trying to limit participation and limit access when we've got all of these really great working tools. Limiting access to either board members or the population at large is kind of silly, I think.
Any other discussion?
I'm going to add one more comment, Charlie. I think if I hear from the members that are typically present, and you folks tell me whether it's if we're talking individually or now, that you need me there to be a more effective board member in your opinion, and that my presence there is better for you as a board, I will be there. But I would hate to see us limit some access to folks that are, currently accessing things remotely while we're still under, well, this option is still available through the governor.
Okay.
Hey, Joel, can I ask,
Yeah.
in reference to your comment or question, how many times have you asked me to repeat myself?
Yeah, a few times, yeah. Not as many as other people. I tend to be able to plug in with headphones sometimes and hear you better, yeah.
I just don't think it's a good system, and personally, when I have dialed in, with the exception of one time, I wanted to throw the computer across the room. The last emergency meeting that we had a quick emergency meeting to validate our votes on the ballot, I couldn't unmute. It was horrible. And I just don't think it's an effective system. And I think being able to see somebody have a conversation and see their body language and ask questions in person, I think we're going to get much done. If our numbers go through the ceiling again, then I think we need to readdress it. But
I'd like to echo that question to Stan. Stan, how many times have you asked someone to repeat themselves, or you said the sound isn't working?
I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times.
It's been more than 4 or 5
I ask
times.
people to repeat themselves in person too, because sometimes people don't speak clearly, or they're not speaking in the microphone or whatever. You know, if we need a better sound system, let's get a better sound system, but let's not make excuses for limiting access to people.
Well, any other discussion on this motion? Not hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm a no.
I abstain. Motion fails. I'm sure we're going to be getting to this question a little bit later. Maybe my opinion will change in the future, but as of right now, I am kind of on the fence. I think we need to get a little bit farther out before I would be in agreement. That being said, do we have anything else before we go to public participation?
I just got a quick comment on that. Can you try a remote meeting? Because you've been to every meeting, try a remote meeting next meeting.
I am here because I don't want to.
Okay. But
I mean,
I think you'll see the effectiveness of where I'm going.
I mean, Ruth Ellen can attest to this. How many meetings have I been to remotely? 0.
He sits in my office and remotes in.
0. That's how many I want to attend. That's how, I agree with, it diminishes my ability to participate. That's my feeling, and that's why I'm here. But every board member has to make their own decision, what they feel is best for themselves and their position here. So, moving along to, you have anything else, Ruth Ellen?
I do not.
Okay, I'm going to open up to public participation. Jen, do we have anybody online to, wants to speak?
If anyone online would like to speak, if they could indicate so now. I did put a message in the chat to let me know, and I do not see anything at this time, but you can unmute yourself if you would like to share something. No, I do not see anything at this time.
Okay, so at this time, I will make a motion to go into, well, our next meeting is scheduled March 1st, which is after February vacation, not March vacation, as it soon may be called. And then we have manifest to sign, and I'll make a motion. First, I'll thank everybody for participating and watching the meeting, and then I'll make a motion to go into non-public session 91A:3, 2, A, B, and C for nominations and resignations.
Second.
Any discussion on a motion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.